Okay, good morning everyone, and thanks the organizer for giving this opportunity. And today I will talk about this magnetorotational dynamo in accretion disk, which is fully turbulent. And this work is done with Pallavi here. So this is the outline of my talk. So the target of or objective of my talk is once this MHD turbulence is fully developed, so how these different diverse physical processes is involved there and how they interact each other, like both like turbulent transport as well as the dynamo mechanism. And once we have this dynamo, so what are the underlying mechanism for this generating for large scale magnetic field? We also want to target that. To do this, so we use two different tools. One is both a local sharing box simulation, one from DNS, and also we did for statistical simulation. So DNS basically solving full MHD equation, whereas the statistical simulation is basically coming from this Reynolds decomposition. Like if we, any dynamical variable, we can write like mean plus fluctuation, and we can construct any kind of stress answer from that fluctuating quantity. So if we solve that, all the statistical correlated directly, it requires some kind of turbulence closure model, which is unavoidable, and it is called like some kind of statistical simulation. And the main key result for this is like we found one kind of new dynamo mechanism, which is more generic for differentially rotating flow or like accretion disk, which is known as this rotation shear current effect, which is conventionally different from the traditional picture like alpha omega dynamo. And also this statistical approach helps us to construct that nonlinear mean field dynamo model. What is the, in the traditional dynamo theory is completely linear. So it helps to construct each transport coefficient and it's a path towards the nonlinear mean field theory, and also some kind of subgrid model which can be included in the global GRMHD simulation to form like accretion disk also in jet structure. So accretion is very ubiquitous in the universe, like it started from protoplanetary disk where the planets forms. Also it can goes like X-ray binary where that compact object can be black hole or neutron star along with some companion. And also it can be formed in the center of the galaxy like AGN, where we sometimes we see very powerful jet from the center accretion disk. And this list is incomplete. There are other sources where I just put it on the broad class of accretion disk here. Now, if we see very basic picture, like though this disk does not follow purely Keplerian, but if we see that gravity balances the centrifugal force, we can easily calculate what should be the angular momentum, and the matter angular momentum profile follows like root over of distance from the central object. So you can imagine that matter from the far away has very strong angular momentum, and near the central compact object, it almost loses all the 100% of its angular momentum to form the disk-like structure. And at the same time, since matter following the Keplerian orbit, it has to release that available gravitational energy such that to maintain that Keplerian profile, and this gravitational energy will be released in the form of heat, radiation, or sometime outflows, and sometimes we do see very powerful jet, like in this schematic diagram. So the main problem here is that how this angular momentum transport is happening here. So the basic picture is like that the matter may have some kind of viscosity in that flow, which can dissipate the angular momentum such that matter will spiral in and form this like structure. But the interesting thing is that microscopic viscosity is very low or too weak, such that it cannot explain the observed luminosity and to form this like structure. And also this hydrodynamic instability is not occurring here because of the rotation, it makes stabilize the disk. So we don't have any explanation what is the origin of that viscosity such that it formed the disk-like structure. Until 1991, this is a breakthrough of discovery of the magnetorotational instability. If the system has some kind of weak magnetic field in this differentially rotating flow, that means that angular velocity is different at different layer. So then it will give some kind of linear instability, which will further give the fully nonlinear developed turbulence. And the turbulence viscosity will transport that angular momentum, which form this disk-like structure. So this is a schematic diagram of like how this instability works. So this spring is basically playing the role of magnetic field. It is a weak magnetic field, which is connected by these two massless particles. And if you part up the system, with time, since they have different differential rotations, so inner particle will move faster than outer one. So it will act some torque through the spring, and the inner particle will face the retarded torque and lose the angular momentum. To maintain Keplerian orbit, it follow the inward path, whereas the outer particle face the forward torque and it carry the angular momentum outward. So in this way, this is a runaway process, and this instability grow on, and this angular momentum will transport outward, and it forms nicely disk-like structure. From observation, we do also see from like Event Horizon Telescope observation near the black hole, we do see very powerful colloidal flux at the edge of the black hole. Also, the numerical simulation for jet, it requires some kind of colloidal flux near the black hole such that it can launch powerful jet. And what is the origin of this magnetic field? So MRI is very powerful tool, not only transport that angular momentum, at the same time, it explains some kind of dynamo mechanism locally which generate that large scale magnetic field, which helps to explain this observation or not, we want to see that. Now to study the dynamo mechanism, so mean field dynamo theory is very successful, which basically solve this induction equation. And if you write down in the Reynolds decomposition or Reynolds averaging form, so any dynamical variable you can write mean and fluctuation, where the fluctuation mean over the fluctuation quantity vanishes. But any kind of correlator will be survived, like 2-point correlator here. So the induction equation for mean field evolution equation looks like that. So here extra floating term is there. So it is basically telling that 1-point correlator has a 2-point correlator. So EMF is formed like two fluctuating quantity, and it requires some kind of closure to solve this equation. And to close this EMF, basically mean field dynamo theory gives that answer that EMF can be expressed as a linear function of mean field and its gradient, where this alpha effect is basically telling how that alpha mechanism try to generate some kind of large scale field, whereas this eta is basically telling that dissipation mechanism. So very famous mechanism is alpha omega dynamo, where you can see if the system has some kind of differential rotation or CR. So it can easily generate from poloidal magnetic field to toroidal field through the differential rotation. It's called omega effect, which is very common and very easy to explain. But the most difficult part is the alpha effect, how the toroidal field will generate poloidal field through this alpha effect. And it is showing that it requires some kind of symmetry breaking in the system. So it requires some kind of upwelling and then twist such that toroidal field will generate poloidal field through this mechanism. And it is linked with that helicity. So helicity information is basically carrying that information from the small scale field to generate the large scale one. But what happens if the system does not have any helicity or alpha effect is absent? So here I will try to explain some kind of new dynamo mechanism where the alpha effect is completely absent. That means when this kind of stratification is not there, then alpha effect will not operate. Another interesting challenge for this mean field dynamo theory is that you can notice in this closure approximation, there are a lot of tensorial components like alpha and eta. So most of the studies basically taking these homogeneous and isotropic assumptions such that you can rule out a lot of tensorial component. And at the same time, since this field is very highly fluctuating, it is very difficult to extract all these tensorial components simultaneously because there can be some kind of degeneracy in the system. So most of the studies so far try to take either homogeneous isotropic assumptions or try to rule out some kind of coefficient and then extract this other coefficient. Another interesting thing is that this EMF is expressed in terms of mean field and the gradient of mean field, and it does not taken care about that mean velocity field or vorticity dynamo in the system. So it is not clear this closure is complete or not. So to do that, we basically tried some kind of unstratified sharing box. Unstratified means the alpha effect will be absent because the statistical symmetry breaking is not happening. But you can see there is very nice exponential growth of large scale magnetic field. So here I am showing 3 different planar average quantity and then further averaging along the third direction, which is giving this RMS value. So you can see first it gives initial exponential growth and then the fully developed turbulence or nonlinear stage, where we can see very nice cyclic pattern as well. So most dominant component coming from the XY average quantity, and azimuthal field is mostly dominant one, but which is coming from the stretch through omega effect through this BX component. If we explain how this Bx will generate, it will help to explain the mechanism very quickly. So the XY average, planar average is basically telling if you have this background CR, which is following this kind of linear CR profile. So By can easily generate through the CR or called the omega effect, but the most difficult part is how Bx will generate such that it complete the cycle. To do that, we use this statistical approach. Instead of writing down this EMF in this fashion, so we have from the statistical expression, we can easily self-consistently construct that EMF, where you can notice that EMF is not only the function of mean field and their gradient, there are another terms is appearing, which is gradient of mean velocity field or like vorticity. Also this third order correlator like nonlinear, fully nonlinear term, which is not either proportional to any of the mean quantity, either mean magnetic field or gradient of mean magnetic field. So you can see this lot of terms are appearing. If we plug in here, we can easily calculate how this radial magnetic field is generating. So apart from all the term, I will request to focus on these two terms from here, like dashed black lines and red line. And here the most dominant component is this gray color, and that's yellow one. So you can see from the radial magnetic field generated only through the EMF, which is overlapping each other. Another term is vanishing. So you can notice this, all this alpha component is 0, such that alpha effect is completely absent here. And the most dominant component is coming from this gray line, which is basically proportional to of delta Z of By. That means some kind of current, shear current effect is operating. So gradient of magnetic field is playing the role. Whereas this nonlinear third order term is basically playing the role of dissipation, which acts as a sink in the magnetic field. So this explains like that there is some kind of more generic phenomena when you have differential rotation. It can easily explain this large scale magnetic field generation mechanism, even there is no alpha effect. And if we summarize these things, so the Bx to By generation is happening through the CR, which is called that omega effect. On the other hand, from By to Bx is happening through the rotation shear current effect, which is two paths. One is this magnetic channel, another is the kinetic channel. And each and every path, there is some kind of vorticity dynamo is also involved. So it explains one completely new dynamo mechanism, which is called rotation shear current effect. And since we have that exact expression for the EMF, it helps to construct that subgrid model, which will further can be implemented in the global simulation and can explain the jet launching mechanism and also EHT observations. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Tushar. Questions? Anyone? Yeah.
So in this the equation that you wrote, the magnetic field equation, there was this viscosity term. Is that something appears because of this MRI effect, or
you mean this
like the viscosity that appears in the yeah, like here you have eta, right? Is that the source of this eta? Is it the?
This is the turbulent viscosity. It is coming from the turbulence, not like that other viscosity.
Oh, this is a different source, is it?
Yeah. It is purely turbulent.
Okay, and then you said there is extra viscosity coming from this MRI effect.
Yeah. So apart from this, so there is another nonlinear third order term. So if you write down that 2-point correlator equation, so there will be a 3-point correlator because it is closure problem. So this term also acting as like a dissipative process. But this is the most well-known mechanism. This is turbulent viscosity, which is coming from fully developed MRI turbulence.
Okay. And the other question was like this this MRI effect, is it something you can see in like apart from astrophysical phenomena, just like in some plasma or experiment or something?
There are a lot of laboratory plasma also, like Taylor-Coate flow. If you do differentially rotating cylinder and if you make a fluid there, so there also you can see this MRI mechanism. So there are a lot of experiment in Germany like Max Planck and also in Princeton. So they have this setup and they try to explain this linear region basically, because nonlinear region is very difficult in that experimental process. Only difference between astrophysics and this lab fluid is that magnetic Reynolds number or Prandtl number is different. So their scale is different. Otherwise, more or less physics is same.
Any more questions?
So in this statistical description, what is the statistical nature is put into this equation? So what exactly are the statistical parameters?
So basically this correlator F, or whenever I'm writing down this evolution equation for F is basically coming from this two fluctuating quantity correlator.
Hmm.
So it is not like mean quantity, this is mean equation. And this is the mean equation which is constructed between two fluctuating correlators.
So because of that fluctuating nature, it is giving you this exponential growth in the magnetic field.
Exactly.
It was not there.
Yeah, so this is the term which is coming from purely turbulent nature and feedback to the mean equation, which is giving that all that phenomena.
Okay.
Thank Tushar. It was a nice talk.